I think it's much better and smarter to play it cool, to wait for the opportunities when they come, and to be patient. So a lot of young people, and I was guilty of this when I was young, are very impatient. They want to get to the top quickly. They want to start making a lot of money. And the goal here is not to get a raise right away, to make a lot of money, to get promoted. The job is to learn skills, to observe how people are, to observe the power game, and to master it early and slowly by observing what's going on around you and not being in a hurry to impress people. So that's how I would navigate that.
Has there ever been a time in your career where you've kind of made the choice, it is Robert's time to outshine the master or betray?
Well, honestly, I've never had a job in my whole life for more than 11 months. I've had like over 50, 60 different jobs. Which doesn't say good things about me. I'm very restless. I don't get along so often with people in these situations. But I can remember I had a job in the 90s for a television show. I won't mention the name because it's rather embarrassing to me, which television show this was. And I was a researcher on the show, which basically meant my job was to find stories that they would then go out and film. It was kind of like a reality television show, right? And there was a team of researchers there. But I was by far the best researcher there. I've been doing research for many, many years. I have definite skills in that. I'm not good at a lot of things, but that's one thing I'm good at. And I'd say of the team of 8 people, 80% of the stories I had found, which was a pretty high success rate. And then one day, the boss, this woman, she kind of chewed me out in a meeting. Like, Robert, you've got an attitude. You're not paying attention. This is very important that you listen to what's going on in this meeting. And it was a very boring meeting. And in my head, I'm going, what the hell does this matter whether I'm listening to your stupid meeting when I'm getting 80% of the stories here, right? Isn't that more important than pretending to listen so closely to your dumb meeting? Well, several months later, I was fired. And I was fired basically because of that kind of attitude, even though the results were there. So I violated the very law that I'm telling you about right now. But at that time, I didn't care because I hated that job. So they fired me and I was fine with that. I went on to my next job. That's not a good attitude for a lot of people in this day and age. I wouldn't advocate that you feel that way. But sometimes you get this idea, you enter the work world kind of naive and you think that what matters is getting results, doing a good job. You know, if you're the one getting the results more than other people in the company, you should be promoted. That's a great thing. But it doesn't work that way. It's political. I wasn't being political with this woman. I wasn't impressing her. I wasn't brown-nosing with her. I wasn't telling her how great she was, how wonderful her meetings were, right? I was just doing my job. And I got fired. So you've got to be aware that people are playing political games. Whenever 3 people get together, this is something I say often, whenever 3 people are together in a group, there's politics, there's ego, there's battling. Who's the best? Who's better than this person? Constantly comparing. You have to be aware of that constantly and not be so naive.
I guess I would think of instances like how could you have gone about that? Imagine you were doing 100% of the stories, you were doing all the work. Yeah. Would you just kind of naturally wait for someone to have promoted you?
Well, no, it's a very good question. What I should have done was I should have not had the attitude. I should have done my job and listened in the meetings and played the political game and say, yes, Ms. Weinstock, her name, yes, you're great. I'm really grateful for this job. I would have been able to keep the job and I would have been promoted. But the problem was I hated the job. I hated the politic. I've hated it my whole life. So I probably unconsciously wanted to be fired. But if you're in a position like I was and you don't want to be fired, you do the job, you get the results, but you also play the political game, and then you're in a very secure position. So I was kind of stupid, I think.
I want to ask about power dynamics. One that I might think you have an interesting take on is power dynamics within marriage. How much power should your wife, or let's just say spouse, have over you in marriage?
Well, when you start playing power games in marriage, you're in trouble. Now, they're definitely always there. But the one thing People don't realize in a marriage, I've been married, I'm not going to say how many years, but it's a lot of years, okay? And I know the ups and downs and the problems that occur and what causes tension and what leads to separations. You have to realize that in a dynamic where there's two people, it's a back and forth thing. It's interactive. So it's never one person's at fault. It's never one person is to blame. It's never one person has power and the other person doesn't have power. Oftentimes, the person who plays being subservient or inferior is actually the one in control of the whole dynamic. And the person who thinks they're the boss and thinks they're in control actually isn't. So it's very tricky, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. Okay? But the main thing in a relationship is you have to be aware that you bring an attitude that every time there's an argument, right, you assume that you're right and the other person is wrong. But you have to take a step back and understand that oftentimes you create the dynamic that makes the other person resentful, makes them angry, triggers their anger. You bring this attitude into the relationship that's actually causing the negative things that you think are originating from the other person. It's very tricky. It's very complicated. People are very complicated. It's not so simple to figure. It's not black and white. I'm the good person, you're the bad person. In a relationship, it's back and forth. The two people are creating this dynamic, right? So you want to have a certain attitude. And that attitude is, I don't want power. You're not after power in a relationship. You're after things being smooth. You want to be supporting each other. You want a loving, giving, caring relationship, not power. And if your attitude is, I need power, I need this person to be doing more of what I want, they're not doing what I want, you're creating a situation where you're going to make them rebellious and upset, and they're going to be giving you the kind of energy that's maybe going to feed more desires for power, and things are going to spiral out of control. So you want to have an attitude that's open, that's giving, that understands that oftentimes you're to blame for these things, and you want to be tolerant of the other person. It's not easy. I've had my own moments where I can't live up to that ideal. It's a skill that you develop. But in general, I tell people in life, don't go around thinking, even in a marriage or any situation, that it's always the other person's fault, that you're the victim of everybody, right? Everyone's after you. You're poor you. These people are being mean to you. You bring to any kind of relationship your own energy, and it creates a back and forth dynamic, and you're as much responsible for what happens as the other person is.
Yeah, Robert, I'm not married, but I do notice in my relationship, and based on what a lot of the common sentiment online for young men is, like, the man should always be in charge, or should at the very least have, like, final say. Do you believe in that at all, or do you think it's always we're trying to maintain this balance of equals so no one feels any insecurity, no one feels any
there's
resentment?
a difference between being equal and being the same. Let's understand that men and women are different, and the differences create the spark, create the tension that's actually makes it exciting, right? So if the man and the woman are just exactly the same, there's no sexual energy, there's nothing going on. So men and women are different. Let's put that aside. Let's agree on that. Biologically, we're different, and we have different needs. We have different emotions. We're just different, right? I mean, it's so clear. I don't understand why anybody argues with that. Okay. So, but when it comes to like power decisions, the idea that it's the man who has the final say, I mean, I know that there might be some women who are comfortable with that, like the whole trad wife type movement and things. But I don't think many women would be comfortable with that, right? Not in this day and age, not after all the stuff we've been through, not after all the abuse women have had to deal with from men for centuries, for millennia, right? So I don't think many women would be very comfortable with that kind of situation. Now, it might be good. It's good sometimes to be taken care of, to have other. I like it with my wife. I've got so many things I have to deal with. I sometimes say, you make the decision here. I'm tired of making the decision. You make it, and I'm happy to do that. But I don't have this feeling like you have to make the final decisions. I think having those kind of boundaries is very artificial and not very productive. right? And so I think when men feel the need to like assert themselves and be the one in control and have the final say, it comes from insecurity. It comes from a place of weakness. You're not secure about your own masculinity. You have to assert yourself. You have to prove that you're superior to the woman, right? And you need to adjust. You need to be aware of these kinds of things. You need to not feel so insecure, and you need to respect the other person, respect their boundaries, and not feel like you have to have the final say, the power in a dynamic. I think that's very deadly. I think it's going to lead to a very unfulfilling relationship.
I think that's great advice. I know that's fairly controversial, and I think you handled it very well. Quick one. I've been doing this podcast for about a year now, and in that time, I've had some life-changing conversations with some of the most brilliant minds on the internet. Anytime I'm struggling with a problem or situation, I have the privilege of asking an expert in that exact area. For example, when I was struggling with burnout from making too much content, I was able to ask Alex Hormozi how he deals with this, and his answer was immensely valuable. My life has improved significantly finding people who listen to my problems and give me feedback on how to improve. I'm honestly grateful to have access to this type of advice, and I want you all to have the same access in your lives. And that's why we're sponsored by BetterHelp. They make it really easy to connect with a licensed therapist who specializes in exactly what you're struggling with. It's actually super convenient to talk to someone from anywhere, by phone, video, or just messaging. But if the therapist you're paired with isn't a good fit, you can swap anytime at no extra cost. BetterHelp has helped thousands of people take that first step. And if you want to check it out, go to betterhelp.com/JackNeil and get 10% off your first month. Human connection and feedback has been one of the key drivers of my success, but you don't have to hit rock bottom to reach out. Anyways, back to the podcast. On seduction, who's the greatest female seducer of all time?
Well, there have been different seductresses throughout history. The originator, I say in the book, of the art of seduction would be Cleopatra. Now, some people say in history there's Helen of Troy, but we don't know if she was an actual person. But if you think about Cleopatra, as far as we know, she wasn't the most beautiful woman. They have this legend now that, you know, the most beautiful actresses play her in a movie. She's just so incredibly beautiful. But actually, we have some images from coins. It's the only images we have from her. And she had a bit of a nose, she had a bit of a beak, and she didn't look ravishingly beautiful. And in fact, the actual documents of the time never describe her that way. And yet, she managed to seduce Julius Caesar and make him go crazy and make him basically lose everything because of her. And then she seduced Mark Antony, his successor. And these were two very different men. Julius Caesar was kind of an intellectual. He was kind of an artist. He was very aesthetic. He loved the theater. And Mark Antony was very man's man kind of type, complete opposite. She had power over all these different men. So when you read the history and you read how she was able to create, she knew every man's weakness. She knew she was in a position, and this is why I say the art of seduction is invented by women. She was the queen of Egypt, but when the Romans came over, she was in a position of great weakness. They were going to take over Egypt, and they were going to run it as a colony. And she used her wiles, her seductive skills, to turn the dynamic around and essentially make Julius Caesar her slave and give Egypt a lot of power in the dynamic. And so she knew that Julius Caesar loved theater, loved grand things, loved spectacle. So she got one of her barges on the Nile River, this beautiful gold barge with just a spectacular, it's hard for us to imagine the spectacles they created in the ancient world with all these beautiful women fanning with palm leaves in all these incredible outfits. And she got Caesar onto this barge, and they did a trip on the River Nile, and it was what completely seduced him. She created theater and spectacle for this man that fed all of his weaknesses, and he was eating out of her hand. I would consider her the greatest seductress. Since then, there were many courtesans in Renaissance Italy, in France, in the 19th century, the heyday of courtesans who were really brilliant. There was also, oddly enough, and I have talked about it in the book, this lesbian seductress named Natalie Barney, who is, I consider, the closest that a woman could be to a rake And the number of her conquests, if you do it mathematical, would be incredibly high. And she had a very powerful seductive skills, but she kind of played more of the male role in the relationship. So, I mean, there are many I could go into, but I would say Cleopatra, and then maybe Marilyn Monroe was, but that's of a different order. Marilyn Monroe was more of seducing the public than of seducing an individual man.
What's the difference between seducing the public and seducing an individual?
The thing about Marilyn Monroe was she was a creation, right? So she grew up very poor. She was in an orphanage here in Los Angeles, right? And so she had a troubled childhood. And she realized when she was like 13 or 14, I think she wore to school a kind of a tight sweater. She was already pretty developed at that age. She noticed all the men looking at her. Boys, you know, she realized she had this power. She came from a bad background. She had no other power except her physical charms. And when she got in front of a camera at an early age, it was like she was always kind of starving for love because she didn't have a parent. She didn't really have a mother and a father that looked after her. She was always sort of starving for love. And that quality in people who want love more than anything is what often makes people charismatic. Because when they get out in front of a public and they talk in the public, you can sense that they want your desire, that they want you. And it's a very powerful feeling. And it's not communicated through words, it's communicated non-verbally through how they look and how they appear. So when she got on camera, the people who were filming her would say she was making love to the camera. She wanted the public to love her, to adore her. So she was really great in those kind of seductions. But there's stories of her. She lived in New York for a while, where she would go to a bar and no one would recognize her. And this is in her heyday. Because what we see on the screen was completely made up. It was all this makeup, it was everything. But when she went into a bar without any makeup, she didn't look any different, any special. It was a creation. She created this feminine icon of seduction that was totally a work of art. But when it came to individual men, she was obviously Marilyn Monroe, but she wasn't like an absolutely incredible seductress with men. She just used her image to seduce.
Right. She used her status that she had cultivated through this. By that same token, you said Cleopatra is the greatest female seductress ever, and then Marilyn Monroe, the modern. Who's the greatest emperor of all time?
Emperor?
Yeah. Like
male emperor?
Napoleon, Caesar, Genghis Khan. Like, who do you think?
In terms of what?
It's kind of a vague question, right? But who do you think was maybe the most cunning, the most intelligent, the most powerful, the most impressive?
Well, it's a good question. Supposedly, Genghis Khan was a brilliant leader and very well loved and very charismatic, but also incredibly ruthless. But we don't have a lot of impressions from the West of people who weren't Mongols could give us like an objective account of him. So it's a little bit difficult. Julius Caesar was a remarkable man, and he created, he made himself dictator of Rome. In the beginning, Rome was a republic, and he was part of a triumvirate, 3 people who ruled Rome, and then he basically crowned himself an emperor. But I'm very attracted to the image of Julius Caesar because, as you know, I wrote a book on warfare, and I'm very interested in strategy. He was a brilliant strategist, right? On the battlefield, he was amazing, incredible, very clever, very, very smart. He had the best strategies. You read about the Gallic Wars that he fought in Gaul and now France. Amazing. And then his conquest of Rome, when he defeated Pompey, is just one of the greatest, most inspiring stories ever. He was a great orator. He was very charismatic. He was loved by his soldiers. He was brave, but he had a weakness, and he had weaknesses, and Cleopatra kind of revealed that. Napoleon is similar to Caesar in that he was absolutely the greatest general I think that ever lived in battle, right? Absolutely creative, very, very brilliant. But he had a weakness for women as well, and Empress Josephine kind of tied him around her finger. And he had his flaws and his weaknesses. I mean, Machiavelli, who is sort of my inspiration for the 48 Laws of Power, one of my favorite writers, he was trying to see who would be, if you could build the greatest leader in history, how would that person be? And he says, the problem in all these people, these powerful people like Caesar, like Napoleon, like Cesare Borgia, like the Borgia popes, and like the Medicis, is they rise to power. You can say that about politicians in America right now, or any business leader, your Elon Musk, etc. They rise to power because of a quality that they have that makes them different, that makes them stand out. It could be just sheer aggression and determination. It could be incredible marketing skills and being able to create the presence of power, etc. They get to the top this way, but when they get to the top, circumstances change and they can't adapt, and they keep using the same thing over and over again, and it becomes their undoing. So a great emperor, a great leader, which I can't think of very many, is somebody who could change, who could adapt, and could become somebody different, who's a bit of a chameleon. And I don't think Napoleon or Caesar actually quite rose up to that level. I don't know of anybody else I would think of. It's a great question, though. It's very interesting.
Elon, I would say, is, whether people hate or like Elon Musk, he is very adaptable in that he's been a member of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. He's kind of shifted his policy over time. He was Team Trump. Now he's not Team Trump.
Yeah.
Do you think he does a fairly good job of being a chameleon?
The problem with Elon, and it's easy for me to criticize him. He's far wealthier and far more successful than I've ever been. But the problem with Elon is I don't think he's in total control of himself. There was an article recently in the Times, which I believe is accurate, which showed that he takes a lot of drugs, right? He's on ketamine. He takes hallucinogenic drugs every now and then. He also is on Adderall, I think, or one of those other drugs for energy. I worked for somebody like that. I was on the board of directors of American Apparel. I don't know if you remember American Apparel. And the CEO of that company, Dov Charney, was similar. And he didn't have a drug problem, but he had some other kind of physical issues. These are people who are not totally in control of themselves, right? They're driven by some kind of inner demon that I think he is, Elon, from his early years. And so some of his chameleon-like behavior, I don't know if it's something that he is actually creating or whether it's something that kind of drives him and he's not in control of the situation. But his strength, if anything, is marketing. So if you look at a campaign-wise, like a military campaign, what he did in the early years of Tesla is one of the great marketing feats of the 21st century, because basically he started a car company, and car companies are very, very difficult to run. They require a lot of capital to get it going, right? And it's very labor intensive. It's very capital intensive. It's like the worst business to start, right? And to make a profit. And what he did was he used social media to create constant interest in himself and what he was doing. And by that, he raised the stock price up because people, thought that Tesla was great. He created this myth. And because of the money that came in from the stock price, from people investing in it, he was able to actually create what he wanted to create. So he kind of built up this dynamic where the money would flow in based on nothing real, not based on quarterly reports, not based on actual profits, but based on the myth of Elon Musk, and it was incredibly successful. So that's his brilliance, but he's not good at politics. He's not good at other things, and so some of it, I just don't think he's in complete control of himself, and that's where I'd say his limits are. Well, I don't judge him for that. I mean, believe me, I took a lot of drugs when I was younger, so I'm not judging him. But when you get to a certain age and you're doing that, I think it creates patterns. It becomes a compulsion, and you're not really in control of things.
Right. Seems like he's chasing dopamine.
Exactly.
He's just always used to doing these huge things.
That's exactly what it is. That's a very good way of putting it, yeah.
In the laws of human nature, you say we are masters at self-deception, and we often lie to ourselves. What lies do people tell themselves every day?
Well, on the most elemental level, I try to tell people that you don't know who you are, okay? So you have to begin from this position of ignorance where you don't really know who you are. And if you begin from that position, then you can stop lying to yourself. But the thing to understand why you don't know who you are is you have all of these emotions that you feel, and we are an animal that's driven mostly by emotion. We think we're all intellectual, that we all think, and it's all our frontal cortex, our executive powers, but that's not it. We're driven by emotions that are much more powerful than our thinking. And you'll feel an emotion that comes from the body. It comes from hormones. It comes from electrical impulses, chemicals in your body that create a sensation that your mind then translates into an emotion: anger, love, jealousy, envy, depression, right? But you're not aware of where it actually originated from. You're attaching a word to it. You're attaching what you think it is, but you don't know where it came from, why you're feeling that way, why your body is responding that way. So you essentially don't understand your own emotions. Oftentimes, you get angry at something, and you think it's that person who triggered it, but it's something else. It's another person days earlier who set the seeds for it. It's your parents who created this pattern. You don't know who you are. You are a mystery to yourself. And because you don't know who you are, your opinion of who you are is basically based on illusions, right? You're not aware. So for instance, in the laws of human nature, I have 18 chapters that are basically about a flaw in every human being: negative qualities, irrationality, narcissism, short-sightedness, envy, dark energy, grandiosity, aggression, you name it, right? You never admit that you have these qualities. It's always the other person. You don't say, gosh, I am a narcissist. I'm really self-absorbed. People very rarely ever do that. So you lie to yourself about, he or she's a narcissist. I care about other people. I'm very giving. I'm always interested in what they want. You're lying to yourself. Your first thought is about yourself and your own interests. And often your desire to please people and do what they want is to give yourself power. It's not out of love. It's not out of the desire to help other people. It's because you want something from them. You are self-absorbed. You are a narcissist. We are all self-absorbed. I am more than anyone. I can admit it. By admitting it, by saying, I can be very self-absorbed, you can now control it to some degree. You can understand that maybe it's not a good quality. Maybe if I understand that's happening, I can change the dynamic. I can become more empathetic. If you understand that you have an aggressive personality, well, then maybe you can start channeling it in ways that are more productive. But people go around in denial. They deny that they don't have any of these emotions. So that's one level of lying. I could go through 100 other levels of lying to yourself, but that's sort of where it starts from.
It's interesting on the narcissism. I find that people who often say that others are such a narcissist is kind of admitting that they are self-interested enough to realize it, that they are narcissists themselves and identifying the other person.
Well, the number one sign that someone's a narcissist is if they say, oh, no, I'm not a narcissist, which means they're separate, they're different from everybody else, which which is a very narcissistic trait. The idea that you're always better than other people, you're superior, is a sure sign of narcissism. So by saying, oh, no, I'm not a narcissist, you're definitely unconsciously revealing the fact that you are a raging narcissist.
What can you tell about a person by looking at their face? Can you tell that someone's a narcissist just by looking at them?
That's a great question. And I've known many narcissists in my life. We all do, so I'm not special that way. And I noticed over the years that there is a kind of a facial quality to narcissists. It's hard to verbalize because it's more for me a feeling, but their eyes are kind of a giveaway. So narcissists often give the impression that they're interested in you. They like you. They're listening to you, which you think is kind of a contradiction. That doesn't sound like a narcissist. But it's not the kind of attention where they're really interested in you. They're trying to get something from you. They're trying to get you to like them so that they can now use you, right? So the way I say it is there's a kind of a deadness in their eyes. They're looking at you, they're listening to you, but you can see they're not really connecting. The wheels are spinning inside their brain about what they can do with the information you're giving them. You can recognize that it's not lighting up. There's not a feeling of warmth or interest in their eyes, right? There's also a kind of, I'm thinking of the people that I've known in my life and certain facial qualities, and there's this kind of smile that is slightly demonic where I can't really describe it, which is why I say some of it's hard to verbalize. But it doesn't feel like it's directed towards other people. So oftentimes when you smile and you laugh, it's a social thing, right? You're responding to other people. You can't really control it. Somebody tells a joke or you hear something and you're laughing and there's kind of a communion going on between you. But the narcissist, there's something, they're just stuck inside themselves. There's kind of a demonic quality to when they laugh and to when they smile. I know I'm not being brilliant at describing it. If I see it, I know it right away.
It's almost like that smile comes from judgment rather than like appreciation of what the other person is saying. Like kind of like a smile to themselves, like something like that maybe?
Yeah, that could be, yeah.
Do you think you have those narcissistic features yourself?
Oh, I definitely do.
Really?
I definitely do. When I wrote the chapter on narcissism, I was going, Jesus, I always thought that I wasn't like that, but I recognize those traits. Now, I control it. I was certainly more of a narcissist when I was younger, in my 20s. I think I had, I've always, I don't know, personally, I don't like talking too much about myself, but I've always been kind of a mix of things. So I'm very interested in other people, and I'm very interested in what they're feeling, and it's kind of unfortunately raised that way. But at the same time, I want attention, and I want more love, I want more attention from people. And so I have a self-absorbed quality. And it's only by recognizing it that I can make something out of it that's not so, to me, self-destructive and handle it in a more rational manner. But definitely, that's the whole point of the laws of human nature and of what I say in podcasts. I don't want to set myself up as this superior person judging you and telling you, look, American people of the world, this is human nature and I'm God and I'm telling you how to. I have all of these traits as well, all of these qualities. That's why I understand them. But we all are flawed individuals. And you can't make yourself a better person. If you want to become a better person, which is what all the self-help books are, all the podcasting is about, you're not going to become a better person until you admit that you have flaws, that you can now look at them and then work on them.
On the lying to yourself portion,
Yeah.
the lies we tell ourselves, is it ever beneficial to lie to yourself?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, too much awareness of your bad qualities can paralyze you, right? So, sometimes it's good to believe that you deserve good things in life, that you have skills, that you have promise that there's hope for the future. It might be built on nothing. It might be totally unrealistic, but it's important to have those beliefs because they can give you energy, they can give you purpose, and they can give you meaning. If we understood everything about ourselves as an animal and our basic drives, we'd probably all kill ourselves, to be honest. So yeah, it's good to lie to some degree and to feel that you're worth something and that you have goals and that you can reach them. A lot of people, when they lose that, it's very sad, and they're too realistic. They go the opposite direction. So we either overvalue ourselves. God, I'm so good. I'm so brilliant. People love me. We overvalue ourselves, or we undervalue ourselves. I'm just a piece of shit. I'm not worth anything. I don't even deserve to be alive. That's equally wrong as well. It's not the truth. But so if you become too realistic, it can bring you down, and you won't you won't have the energy to accomplish anything. So you have to have some degree of self-love, which is the origin of narcissism. I say there's the healthy narcissist. The healthy narcissist does love themselves, is self-absorbed, but they're able to channel that love into art, into creating things, into a podcast, into a relationship. That's a healthy narcissist.
Saying it's a spectrum, maybe. Do you think a lot of people high in narcissism lean toward art as a means of like channeling their narcissism? Is that common?
Well, it's another good question. A lot of really great artists, famous writers, painters, musicians, filmmakers are definitely narcissists, right? And you have to be to some extent, because you have to be inside your own head, inside your own images, your own dreams, your own visions, and you believe in them strong enough. The world is a tough, mean place. People want to bring you down constantly. It's not easy to create a film or a book or anything like that, because people are so damn critical, right? They want to bring you down. And so you have to have a lot of self-belief in this world to get ahead. You have to really be able to shut out all the crap people throw at you. My wife right now, she's a filmmaker. She's directing a film in Europe. She's dealing with all that stuff. And it's just so 48 laws of power, and I really feel terrible about it. But particularly in the film industry, which I know pretty well, people are awful. To create your vision of a film, you have to be very tough. You have to be narcissistic. A lot of business leaders are narcissistic because to get to the top, you have to have that level of self-belief, and you have to have charisma. You have to be kind of an Elon Musk, right, or like this guy, Dov Charney, who was the CEO of American Apparel. So a lot of high-functioning, high-level people are narcissists. Some of them can control it, and they channel it into something productive, like a good business, like a work of art. Others are brought down by it because it's like a demon inside themselves, and it takes them over, and they can't control it in any way.
It's been interesting doing this podcast because I've at least recognized at certain levels of success, like it leans more toward more confidence, more narcissism, and then once you get to that higher echelon, it goes right back down to humility, because I'm trying to think of a good example of someone, but
this is you talking about yourself?
Just interviewing guests. Like the more successful people have been, they've often had more humble characteristics, because someone told me this once. They're like, if you meet Dwayne "Rock" Johnson and he says, wow, that's a really ugly shirt, like you're going to take that pretty hard, because it's like, oh, this person is so high status, so he can only be nice. This is something I've noticed. Robert, is it ever truly possible to know a person?
Well, it's a matter of degree, and it's a matter of what you just said, humility. So you can never know completely another person, right? You're trapped in your own body. You're trapped in your own mind. So you don't know the thoughts of the other person. You're often not aware of what they really think about you, right? So to think that you know someone is very dangerous, because it's based on your own projections, on your own preconceptions, based on your own childhood, your parents, etc. So it's very dangerous to think that you know someone, that you have pigeonholed them, because people are complex. They're changing. They're never the same. You think someone is outgoing, but then they have introspective traits. You think somebody is mean, but that they also can be very kind at the same time. People are complicated. You can't fit them into these categories. Everybody's an individual. Everybody's different. They have their own backgrounds, they came from different social classes, different ethnicities. It's arrogant to think that you ever know anybody. So you have to begin from this position, almost like Socrates, of complete ignorance. I don't really know them. And then you kind of can start to maybe understand to a better degree who they are. Now, I can't understand, or I can't be inside like my wife's skin. I don't know what she's thinking. But I can know what she's feeling. And it's a different thing because we're intuitive. We can pick up the moods of other people. But we don't usually, it's a skill that you develop. But you sense that someone is upset or someone's excited. And there's cues and you can feel it in their body language. And so you know in that moment when you said something, it upset them. And then you can analyze what happened. So I said something and I picked up upset body language. What is it that I said? Did I trigger an insecurity? Did I make her feel like she did something wrong? What is it? Then from that knowledge, you can begin to maybe understand her insecurities, her weaknesses, what her world is like. But the most important thing I like to say on that score is when you go to see a movie, you're interested in the character because you don't know them. They're a stranger. And slowly things are revealed about who they are, and it's exciting. You know, they're evil, they're good, they're a mix of these things. That's what makes you want to watch the movies, the characters involved, right? But we have a hard time translating that into real life. And I want people to think of the people they interact with as characters in a movie. They are strange, they are weird, they have their own fantasies, their own dreams, their own childhood traumas, their own childhood joys, right? And just as you get inside the character in a film, you want to get inside the skin of other people and understand what makes them tick and what their world is like. And it's infinitely interesting because people, as I said, are weird. They're strangers. They're like alien creatures. And it should be exciting to try and understand more and more about them. But never, ever have the belief that you're going to know people completely. They're always going to surprise you. They're always going to elude you. There's an element of mystery you can never get behind.
Is that a common mistake people make in relationships, revealing too much about themselves too quickly and becoming boring, let's say?
That is definitely a problem. I mean, in The Art of Seduction, I have a chapter, the last chapter, the 24th, about, so they have strategies of seduction in the second half of the book, and they kind of slightly go in sequence, leading to the end, to the culmination of your seduction. Then there's a chapter, the after effects, after you seduce someone. And the idea is, even in a relationship of a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you have to keep some level of seduction going. It's not the same level as when you're first dating because that would be exhausting, right? But you have to keep a sense that you're not taking the other person for granted, that they're not so familiar to you that you just stop trying. You don't dress nicely anymore. You don't take them to nice restaurants. You don't try and do things that are surprising. You have to keep an element of mystery and surprise in any relationship to keep it going. And if people become too familiar, if you become too familiar to them and you just fall into these patterns, then all of that mystery and spark is gone. So the key in a relationship is to have moments where you surprise the other person. You've been with them for 10 years and suddenly you take them to a restaurant or on a trip that they had no idea you were thinking of, or you say something that's completely surprising to them. It doesn't have to be something expensive. It can just be an action or a behavior that they've never seen before in you. And it's not fake, it's real, but you have to realize that the feeling for the man or the woman that you are being taken for granted, that they know you, they know everything about you, is deadly. It destroys the sexual tension between you, destroys everything else.
In today's world, a big controversy among relationships is checking your partner's phone, like seeing what they're doing behind your back.
Yeah.
Do you think you should check your boyfriend or girlfriend's phone?
No. I mean, I suppose there could be a justification if you are pretty damn certain they're cheating on you, or if they're like a criminal doing harmful behavior. Maybe. But you should really respect other people's privacy, and the idea that you're going to cross that boundary, I think, reveals something very bad about you. So if you suspect behavior that you don't like, then confront them about it, then ask them about that. And of course, if they're cheating on you, they're going to lie. But I'm trying to help you develop your nonverbal skills. It's so easy to see through a liar. You know, traditionally women have this more problem with men, but that's changing, where they feel, their gut tells them that there's something wrong with this man. He's lying, he's cheating on me, he's no good. But their heart, they want to be loved, they want to be in the relationship, so they don't trust their gut, that first impression, and they get into the relationship, and then it gets really nasty and ugly. I want you to trust your gut about people. If you feel like there's something sneaky or slimy or not trustworthy about this person, then there's probably something there. And the best thing to do is to try and confront them. And you can tell by the way they talk and the way they react that they're lying, right? Or that they're not lying. But, going into people's privacy and going into their phone, I think is very, very invasive. It's violent, and I don't think it's warranted. I mean, I think a lot of it is you're just trying to find out more about them. You're trying to find out more about their secrets and their fantasies, or what they're doing, or if they're on Tinder looking for other mates or something, or whatever. I think you just got to resist that kind of thing and respect people and not feel like you're given license to spy on them in some way. I think it's very dangerous.
If you feel the need to check someone's phone, it's because you went wrong at an earlier point, establishing some type of boundaries or communication, or vetting out the person fully, perhaps. That makes a lot of sense. I agree with the trust your gut thing. I always tell myself, no, be logical about it, but every single time it's always been the gut was right.
Yeah, you oftentimes, when you first meet somebody, it's a very strange thing. Because when you meet people for the second or the third time, it's not the same, right? But when you see them the first time, there's a weird energy going on because they're a stranger. And strangers, there's something strange, there's a wariness about them, there's a curiosity. It's a different energy than anything else. And you're feeling something from that person that's different from after you've seen them 2 or 3 times, because after 2 or 3 times, you're not paying attention. You've assumed, this is what they're like, I know who they are. That first time, you don't know that. And those gut feelings are much stronger. You're picking up vibes about them. Something is a little bit off about this person, right? Something about that narcissist, those eyes I was talking about. You pick that up, whereas the 3rd or 4th time, you're not sensitive to it anymore. So yes, you've gone wrong. You weren't paying attention earlier on, and now you're involved with someone who's up to no good.
I really love the quote that's like, the first time you meet someone, they reveal who they are. Because say you and I developed a close friendship. This is our first time meeting. And say I made one joke while we hung out with each other. And you laughed at it really hard. Then I made another joke. Then I just kind of become the jokester in Robert's life. But I might not be like that to other people. So we shift our behaviors the more we hang out with a person and stray further and further away from ourselves. Have you noticed this is the case?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, this is part of the element of you don't know people that you're around. You don't know yourself, but as well. And what I mean by that is when you're around your boss, you have a different manner. You speak differently, your voice is different, your body language is different, the way you walk is different. And then with you when you're with your spouse or your children or a colleague who's you're equal with. You're completely different, right? What does that mean? What's going on here? Who's the real you? Is it how you behave with your boss when you're all a little bit tense and your voice is a little more hesitant? Or is it the real you when you're with your friend joking around? Or is it the real you when you're talking to your wife or your husband? You're a chameleon, you're an actor. You're constantly wearing a mask and changing how you behave depending on the level of power, the social status, the level of how well you know the other person. You're constantly shifting who you are, right? So if other people are doing that, you don't know who they are. So for me to assume that you're just this jokester type and that's who I've pegged you at, but you're completely different when you're with other people, you know? I remember I had this boss. I was working at a magazine in New York in the 80s, a pretty well-known magazine. And this boss, he was really nice to me. I thought, what a nice guy. This guy's really nice, you know, very unusual. Very down to earth. But then I would hear stories about what an asshole he was to the people behind closed doors, the people who worked for him, the people who worked directly under him. But he hid it from everybody else, but only like 3 or 4 people saw what a true asshole he was. So people are deceptive that way. They're trying to present to you a front that will make you impress you, but they'll have a different front with somebody else. So just never think that you really actually know a person because they're presenting something that they want you to believe is the reality.
Robert, what do you believe is the ugliest human emotion? And what emotion makes you do the most evil? Or what makes people do the most evil when they feel that specific emotion?
Well, it's hard to there's no algorithm that can determine what's more evil in these situations. So it's subjective. But one of the ugliest emotions is envy, simply because people don't recognize it. They don't admit to themselves that they're feeling envy. And because they don't admit to themselves that they feel envy, they feel they have license to do whatever they want. So a lot of murders, a lot of terrible crimes, a lot of sabotage have been committed out of envy of the person that you're dealing with. But you never admit it to yourself because envy means that you feel inferior to someone else. You wish you had what they have. Humans don't like to admit that they're inferior, that somebody has something that they wish they had. So we justify it to ourselves. We say, they're really a bad person. They're evil. They're inconsiderate. They're all full of themselves. They're arrogant. It's actually stemming from us. It's stemming from the fact that we wished we had what they had. We feel envy. And because we justify it as it's their problem, we're now justified to commit terrible things to them, spying on them, hurting them, sabotaging them. I have stories in the Laws of Human Nature of the great Mary Shelley, the woman who wrote Frankenstein, and how she was a magnet for envy. Some people are magnets for envy, and they're magnets for envy because they're so good. They're so successful. They're smart. They're beautiful. They're witty. They've got all these good qualities. A lot of people hate them and envy them. And she brought this woman into her life who was so friendly and nice. And that's what envious people often do. They often ingratiate themselves so that they can hurt you. And this woman ended up stealing her husband from her, who was the famous poet, Shelley. He ended up dying in an accident. She basically ruined Mary Shelley's life, destroyed it through envy, right? And finally, it took a long time because Mary Shelley didn't want to acknowledge this, but finally she realized that this woman is evil, downright evil, right? So envy can turn into a very evil, destructive emotion. It's not always that. There's passive envy where I myself feel envy for a great basketball player who could do things that I could never do because I love basketball. I was never very good at it, but God damn it, I really envy Kobe Bryant. but I don't do anything about it. I love him. He was my hero. But so there's passive envy where you kind of envy, I've talked about this before, but Ryan Holiday, I was once his mentor, and now he's incredibly successful. He's younger than me. He's better looking than me. I could feel envy towards him, and I do, and I admit it. But it's passive envy. I don't act on it. But people who are very insecure and feel envy are capable of very evil things. The other emotion that can lead to evil actions are people who are so certain of themselves. They know the truth. They know what is going on. They know the answer to everything. And because they know what is happening, they're willing to do anything, right? They'll take all kinds of actions to prove that they're certain, but their certainty is not based on anything real. So I always look at people who are filled with conviction and certainty as actually very dark figures. The warm human quality that you want is you don't know. You're uncertain. You're not sure this is exactly the right thing to do. You're not killed by doubt. You're not able to not take any action, but you always have a sense of, maybe I don't know what's right. Maybe I have to think more deeply about it. Maybe I have to be more of a human being than this machine that's so certain about things. But those would be sort of, to me, the two most potentially evil qualities.
It's funny how often you never hear anyone say just the words, I don't know.
I know.
No one can ever just admit that they don't know something.
I know.
I would assume that if you went to anyone on the street and asked them any question about just the United States, like name the state, they would just give a guess. No one just ever says, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very true. And when you do meet somebody, like in an interview or on television or in media, who says, I don't know, I immediately respect them. I immediately think, wow, that's great. That's so unusual. The other quality is, yes, it was my fault. I made a mistake. It wasn't the other person. I'm not a victim here. I made a mistake. I own up to it. I'm taking responsibility for it. How rarely do you ever hear that?
That's a rare one too. Yeah. I'm not friends with that person anymore because I was an asshole. You never hear anyone say that. But it's more true that it's not because someone had to be. You've mentioned how the best seducers kind of mirror childhood fantasies. Why did the best seducers act like children? Or have this like childlike characteristic about them that makes them very charismatic?
Well, not all of them do, but a lot of very good seducers do because it's a very natural quality. So children are by nature very seductive because they're not trying to put on a front. They just are who they are, right? And they're very fresh and they say what they think and they have weird fantasies, and they're charming, and we're charmed by them, right? And so when a person retains that quality, retains that openness, retains that kind of spontaneity, retains that kind of unpretentiousness, we're charmed as well, and we can be seduced by them. And one of the types, in the book I have 9 types of seducers, and I'm trying to tell you, the reader, that you are at least one of these types, maybe 2, but usually there's one that stands out. And one of the types is the natural, which is the person who's retained their childlike qualities.
This makes sense.
But in all of them, if the seducer seems too calculating, too cold, too in control, too trying to dominate and get sex or get a favor out of it, it's sometimes easy to see through. And it's not very seductive. But we don't think of children as being seducers. We just think of them being themselves. But actually, children are trying to seduce. They actually are trying to get your attention. They are trying to get your love. But if you make it seem like you're just a natural, like you're just naturally who you are, then people won't realize that you're seducing them. You can get away with a lot. Whereas if you're so cold and calculating and it's so clear you're making moves, so clear you read Robert's book and you're following this, idea and that one, then people can see through it. I remember in the early 2000s, the whole pickup artist thing was sort of taking off. And they had all these strategies that they would use, like negging and things like that. And they reached a point where I would talk to women and they say, I've seen that strategy used on me so many times that I could see it coming from miles away. It completely lost its effect because it was so clear